Good morning. Oh yeah, that was enthusiastic. I even gave you guys 10 extra minutes, right? Well, welcome everybody to the 2017 Alaska Housing and Homelessness Conference. I'm super excited to be here. I'm Brian Wilson, if you haven't met me yet, Executive Director of the Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness. This is to my knowledge, the first time we have ever held this conference in Fairbanks. Is that right, Scott? Yeah, it is. So, I'm really excited. The Fairbanks Coalition, many thanks to them for helping organize this event. They have a volunteer army out there that have been great to work with. So I'm really excited that we got things started on a good note. So this conference, I'm going to talk kind of about the themes of it in a little bit. You'll hear a lot from me, actually. I'd actually like to first invite up the Mayor of Fairbanks, Mayor Matherly, to give a welcome to Fairbanks.
Morning, everybody. That was a terrible good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How many people woke up in a nice warm bed today? How many people in this room are blessed? And finally, how many people want to save lives through this effort you're on today? That's what you need to do. We're proud to have you in Fairbanks, and we're glad you're going to have fun, and we're glad that you're going to make connections. But please remember that you're saving people's lives. I don't want to start on a down note, sometimes because I'm a pretty upbeat guy, and I'm proud to serve as mayor of this city, but there's too many homeless people in this city, and probably where you're from as well. And nobody should be sleeping outside. It just shouldn't be happening. And this is what this conference is going to do. You are going to save lives with your efforts, and that is something that's huge. Absolutely huge. I talked to my daughter yesterday. She's living in Tent City right now in Seattle. How many people have heard of Tent City? Have you heard of that? This touches me personally, so I take this very seriously, extremely seriously. She's 26. I don't have a lot of control over what she does as an adult. But if we could stop this problem, where it starts young in some cases, and Mary Lee Bates, a woman I really admire, she knows it starts young. So I am very proud that you're here. I'm also very proud of the efforts that Mike Sanders and Scott Weiser have done for the city of Fairbanks as our housing homeless coordinator. I am so proud of him. Go ahead, it's fine. He's just an energetic person that brings the different areas together in Fairbanks, because one of the things that I think gets confusing is there's like 100 different organizations that do great things, but there was no like conduit, you know what I mean? Like one spot. And now with Mike's efforts, they all meet in one spot and they exchange ideas. And some people overlap, some people don't. But if you don't have food or a home, that's the basic needs that we all need. And in America, and in Alaska, and in Fairbanks, that should not happen at all. So enjoy your seminar. Welcome to Fairbanks. I'm very proud to have you all here, but also I'm more proud of you for saving lives, which you will be doing. Thank you, and blessings to all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mayor Matherly. Next, we're going to bring up Mayor Castle, the North Star Borough Mayor.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for being here. How come this is your first time to Fairbanks? Come on, you should have been here before, and you're going to be here again, trust me, because we're a good community, and we welcome folks, and the hospitality here in our community is something we take great responsibility for, and making sure folks feel welcome to our town. I am very pleased that you're here, not only because we like to have guests in Fairbanks, but because this is such an important mission, not only in Fairbanks, but across the state of Alaska. We need to work on it. And your presence here shows that you're interested in this topic and this issue across our state. So thank you very much for playing and participating. I probably don't have to tell you how important this issue is, not only to the individuals that are homeless, but to a community as a whole. It really affects an entire community, an entire state in so many ways. And starting right with the individual and the loss of dignity and self-worth right from the bottom up. And the economic impacts of the community, the health care for the individual, the impacts on the health care industry in a community. It just ripples through the entire town. We need to do better across the state, and you're here to help us find a way to do that. I did just a tiny bit of research. I wanted to see where the Governor's Council on Homelessness started, and I found out that Administrative Order number 214, which happened in April of 2004, was the Governor's administrative order to create that. As part of the order, there was an action plan put together, and it was dictated by the governor that by June of 2005, we would accomplish and get this game plan put together. There were 5 items or actions that were specifically identified. The first 3 were kind of homework type things. They said, let's get accurate fiscal and demographic information. So we're kind of going to document the quantity of the problem. The next item, 2, is an inventory and an analysis of existing activities and programs, what's out there and available. Item 3 was an inventory and assessment of the existing statutory and regulatory, the laws associated with this. So a lot of homework to begin with. Item 4 was really the meat, the action items, the things that we needed to do. And I was surprised, or not surprised, but a lofty goal was set. It said that statewide strategies designed to substantially lessen homelessness in the state within the next 10 years. That was 12 years ago that we were identified to do that. How much progress have we made in 12 years? We have made some. Have we made the substantial difference to lessen homelessness across our state? I'm not sure that we've quite gotten there yet. There were 3 sub-bullets under this particular item. It said, identify funding opportunities to assist homeless persons in the state. That's a challenge today, isn't it? I mean, fiscal issues across our state, it's getting harder and harder to find a nickel somewhere. It seems that somehow needs of the community, particularly for the folks a little farther down on the ladder in opportunity, they're the first ones that get left behind when we have fiscal issues. That makes our job more challenging in trying to address this issue. I think we're up to the task, though. We've got some tools we can use to overcome that, and we still have influence in Juneau also. We need to use that. We need to make sure our legislators are informed and educated. The next item was involve non-traditional stakeholders, including businesses, philanthropic, faith-based, and other community organizations. Those are the folks that I think have been doing a fairly reasonable job. I know in our community, I can't speak statewide, but a lot of the churches and different organizations have popped up to identify a specific need that might be associated with this, whether it's a veterans group or a specific healthcare issue or whatnot. We've had a number of them cropping up in our community. But it seems to be a little bit disjointed. We've developed in individual silos over the course of the years here in Fairbanks and haven't worked together as good as we could. So I'm really encouraged about working better together in this conference. That's huge, and that's how we are going to collectively overcome the fiscal issues that we have. The third item under the meat and potatoes here speaks specifically to that. It says promote systems integration, including interagency agreements to reduce duplication. Let's reduce the duplication among assistance programs. So we have gaps between different programs and we have duplications. We need to work on that. It's something that I identified before I was elected mayor. My wife has worked a little bit on this homelessness issue, and I'm pretty well versed on what's going on in our community. And so when I became mayor, I said, hot diggity, now I can work on this, and I'm going to host a homeless summit. And I'm going to bring all these disjointed groups together and start talking about how we can better work together. And I started planning it. We had a meeting within the mayor's office. We were all excited, and our staff was ready to roll it out, and I announced it at a director's meeting, which I have to run to here in just a couple minutes. But at the director's meeting, our attorney said, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but you are a mayor of a second-class borough, and you don't have health and social services powers, and you do not have the authority to host a housing and homeless summit or meeting in this community. I said, you got to be kidding me. This is an economic issue as well as a health and social services issue. She said, I'm sorry, it doesn't fall underneath the powers of the Fairbanks North Star Borough. You are not going to do it. Yeah, I can see the frustration over here. That's what my face looked like, too. It was like, this was like one of my top priorities. Now I'm mayor and I can't do this? So I'm here on my own time. I'm not here on borough government time because I can volunteer my own personal time on different issues. So I'm here this morning on my personal time to say thank you. We need to work better together because that's what's going to make us successful. That's what we're not doing very well as a country or a state these days. We tend to get polarized and dig our heels in and not work together. Why do we do that? You don't accomplish anything when you behave that way. Let's work together. Let's not get territorial. Let's see where we can end duplication. Let's fill in those gaps where we don't have services, and let's elevate our entire mission because we got to do better, and we can. Thank you. And welcome to Fairbanks, because this is a good town. We do have a homeless issue, but it's going to get better with your help, as it will across the state. Thank you very much.
Well, they just did my job. So next we're going to roll with a video from Governor Walker. He couldn't make it today because, you know, he just had to start the legislative session today, so which I guess is understandable. And then that'll be followed by a short message from Elizabeth Schultz.
Thank you for working on the critical issues of affordable housing and reducing homelessness. My administration shares your passion and dedication to finding solutions that will help provide for statewide housing needs. I firmly believe that it is by pulling together that we will build a safer and stronger Alaska. Collaboration and coordination will be needed to move the dial on these incredibly challenging issues. We have studied this problem for years. Thanks to the demanding work of many of you in this room, we have solid data and understanding of our statewide needs and action plans to move forward. Now is the time to pull together to act. I again thank you for all your time and energy that you are putting into serving those in need and working for sustainable solutions.
Good morning. Oh, I don't know if I can move that down. I'm shorter than the other speakers. My name is Elizabeth Schultz, and I have the honor of working as the nonprofit and community liaison for Governor Bill Walker, who wished he could be here this morning, but as Brian said, this is the start of the special session, so he can't. But he sent me, and in this role, I have worked with many of you already. I have had the opportunity to get to know many of you in this room, as many of you are the nonprofit leaders, the staff, working on the crucial issues of reducing homelessness, increasing mental health and substance abuse programs, addressing domestic violence and sexual assault in our communities, building affordable housing for all, supporting the reentrance back into our communities, and so much more that you do. You are the folks on the ground every day, and we recognize that. We know that you are working in our communities to make them safer, stronger, and more just for all. In this room are also the staff and volunteers of state and federal agencies. They are also working on these issues and dedicating their time and efforts to seeking long-term solutions to the growing needs in our communities. We are all here together for the same reason. As several of our mayors and speakers have said this morning, we want to help save lives. We know people are hurting. We know people are homeless and at risk for becoming homeless. And we know that we don't have all the pieces in place to fix this, but we are going to try. We are going to get together once again to be honest with one another about the work that needs to happen together to build upon our successes and to create more good work and action plans that we can get behind. Governor Walker asked me to come here to share two things. One, his dedication to this issue. He knows our communities are at risk without more resources. This is why he continues to put everything on the line to push for a sustainable financial plan for our state. He knows that all of you need this to develop sustainable action plans for the work that you are doing. And two, he has a desire to know from you what is working and what is not so that he can help. He recently called together his council. He has a council on the homeless, like you just heard, that's been in existence since 2004, and not every governor has met with his council at length and asked them for feedback, for responses, and for action. This governor just did that in September. He pulled together his council and he asked them for a few things. In repeating something he often says, he says, I don't want to hear about the studies. We've studied this problem forever. I want to hear action plans and I want solutions. I need less of an advisory board and more of an action board. Please tell me what you need. He then also said, what are the roadblocks? What are things I can do? If I'm in the way, tell me, and I'll work to get out of the way. And so he sent me here to ask you those things. I'm going to be here for 2 days, and I want you to come tell me from your community, what are the solutions? What are the roadblocks? And I promise them that they will be heard. I cannot promise in this fiscal situation, like anybody can, what will move fast, but I can at least promise you that they will be heard because he cares and he wants to know and he wants to collaborate better and pull the right people together to work better together. And thank you for having me, and thank you for this conference and all the work I know you have put into pulling these people together. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You know, it'd be pretty bad form if I didn't recognize my bosses in the room as well here, the AKCH2 board. And so I know that we have several of them here, and so I'm going to ask you guys, the board members, to stand up as I read your names. We have our board chair, Scott Schomburg from City and Borough Juneau, Maria Lovashuk from Juneau Housing First Collaborative. She couldn't make it today. She's busy opening a facility or something. Catherine DeLacy from Love Inc. on the Kenai Peninsula. She's our secretary. Our treasurer is Dave Rose from the Matsu Coalition on Housing and Homelessness. Deborah Bittney from the Rasmussen Foundation. I don't think I've seen her yet. Holy moly. Talk about bad form here. That's going to become an issue. Kara Carlson from Interior Alaska Center for Nonviolent Living, Rodney Gaskins, Fairbanks Rescue Mission, Travis Hedwig, University of Alaska, Anchorage, Allison Kerr from Covenant House, Alaska, Jordan Nigro, Zach Gordon Youth Center in Juneau, Sam Okakoke, Native Village of Barrow, John Spurbeck, Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, Sue Steinacker, Nome Emergency Shelter Team, John Weaver, Valley Residential Services in the Valley, and Beth Wilson, Division of Behavioral Health. These guys all work on a volunteer basis, and they are truly inspirational for me and for everyone that they associate with. So I do thank you guys for being here. So I'm super excited about this conference. I feel like the agenda really came together in a strong way. I feel like it's difficult to figure out what session you're going to want to go to. during each of these session blocks. If there's several of you from the same community, I do encourage you to divide and conquer and bring that information back to your area. There's a few themes to this conference, but really it all comes back to working better together. We've heard this quite a bit. We talk about collaboration all the time, but this is a really important conference because we have, more than in previous years, a lot of real rural representation here. So we have folks from all four corners of the state that'll be speaking, that'll be participating in Q&As, and so I feel like this is a great opportunity to hear the stories that we don't often hear. And so there's a lot of great rural sessions starting this afternoon, facilitated by Travis Hedwig in the back and Sue Steinacker, identifying challenges that we have, and then really keying in on solutions and networking better tomorrow. You know, we're going to talk a lot about capacity building. There's a lot of small communities here that are just getting their coalitions up and running, and we have some of our great coalition leadership from several communities holding a session tomorrow afternoon. We're going to hear a lot about youth homelessness and a lot of the successes and exciting things that are happening in this state to address youth homelessness. We also have a good federal and state partner listening session tomorrow where you have an opportunity to ask questions of your federal and state partners that you may have. And tomorrow morning, we really need to find our voice, and we really need to, as Elizabeth said, not just be continuing studies, and we really need to come in with action steps. And we have a fantastic opportunity training session tomorrow morning hosted by Terry Tibbett with the Alaska Mental Health Board and Advisory Board on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse on Advocacy 101, getting your voice heard. So if you want to get more involved in advocacy in your communities, I highly suggest that. And then, of course, this afternoon we have the Governor's Council on the Homeless. And at the beginning of all of those meetings, there's a public comment session. Please speak up and share your story. Again, thanks to the Fairbanks Council, Coalition on Housing and Homelessness, they've organized a series of tours of their facilities here. There are some amazing programs and projects in Fairbanks. There's a huge red van parked out front that we'll be bringing people around to and schedule the tours in the lobby. So please sign up for those, and then when it's your tour time, just go to the registration desk and they will take you to your facility. And then also just kind of housekeeping, travel scholarships. I know many of you were able to attend this conference on the travel scholarships that we are providing. Tomorrow morning, there will be an opportunity to get reimbursement checks written right on the spot. We'll have one of our board members, John Spurbeck. Raise your hand, John. Tomorrow morning, I think around like 9:30 or 10-ish in the morning. 8:30 in the morning, all right. Let's get up early. Or you can just email me your receipts and we'll put it in the mail. Yeah. And how awesome is it that we have Diane Yentel all the way from Washington, D.C., the president and CEO of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, to talk to us today after lunch about affordable housing. We are very honored to have you here and thrilled to hear what you have to say. So thank you for coming all the way. And tomorrow we're going to have a great panel session for our lunch plenary featuring four folks from Northwest Alaska, West Coast Alaska. Delbert Pengawi from the native village of Savunga, Chris Kolarok from the Bering Straits Regional Housing Authority, Eva Malvich from Bethel Winter House, and Chris Collins from Northwest Nupiat Housing Authority. They have amazing stories to share, and I'm really excited about that. You'll also notice in your packets that you have a ballot. We always hold our board elections during our conference. We have 4 open positions this year, and we have 11 very qualified people going for them. That's so awesome to see that there's a lot of interest to get involved at the state level. If you want to learn more about each of these candidates, jump to our website, alaskahousing-homeless.org. Upper right corner, you'll see a conference link. Just hover over it and go to board elections. And we have resumes and statements of interest on that page. So please take the time to look into that. And when you fill out your ballot, you get to vote for 4 of the 11 names. Turn it in at the registration desk, and they will take that for you. We'll announce the results of that tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at lunch. So get your ballots in by 10 a.m. tomorrow. And then also, we have a conference app. This is an easy way to schedule your conference sessions, connect with other folks who are at the conference, tweet out, live tweet. Who's on Twitter here? Anybody on Twitter here? All right, a few. We're working on it in the state. So yeah, give out your live tweets and share the stories here. All right. I think that, we work in a really amazing field. I'm kind of copycatting what everybody else has said up to this point, but it's true. We work in a field where you are just dedicated to help people. I mean, how awesome is that, right? I've worked many jobs where that wasn't the case. And so it has been truly inspiring over this last year and a half to travel across the state into many different communities and meet folks who have extremely limited resources, who work 50 to 60 hours a week, oftentimes on a volunteer basis, and trying to navigate a system that isn't always set up perfectly to accomplish your mission, yet you are still so driven to helping those who need help. I really feel like when I go to each of these communities, I get this sense sometimes that people feel alone in this mission, that people are stressed out and they're burnt out and they feel overwhelmed. And that isn't the case. We need to do a better story, kind of telling your story and connecting with each other and sharing the good work that you are doing, because it's absolutely incredible. And traditionally, we haven't really done a great job of that. I'm just going to be completely honest. Just a couple years ago, we were in a situation where we couldn't even tell you how many homeless people there were in the Balance Estate in a particular community. We had a number. It's absolutely amazing how far we've come. I want to talk about that a little bit. I know that I'm kind of a data wonk, and that frustrates some folks sometimes because I'm always rattling off numbers or whatnot, but it is so incredible. I tell this story to every conference that I go to, every COC meeting that we go to, and everyone, all the other equivalents, COC leads, are just, their jaw hits the floor because of the amazing hurdles that we have overcome. Just 2 years ago, we had a very limited amount of people who are even reporting what you're doing into the HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System. We had absolutely horrible quality data. We had horrible data completeness, which is, kind of a complete client record. And as I mentioned, we had extreme reporting limitations. We couldn't even get the information back into your hands to use it effectively for advocacy. So then we brought in and made a great partnership with the Institute for Community Alliances. You guys raise your hands over there. Yeah. Our great ICA HMIS lead. And in 1 year, in the first year, we only had really one employee with ICA, which was Alyssa Parrish, and she wasn't even in this state. She was in Iowa, of all places. Yet in that first year, we were able to increase our number of users reporting into the system by 44%. We had a 37% increase in new projects reporting into the system. Alyssa hosted over 100 new user trainings in 1 year, and we saw a 250% increase in projects meeting the HUD data completeness standard. In June 2015, it was 32%. In the same month in 2016, it was 82%. It is much higher even now. I really want to recognize the work that Alyssa has done to give us the ability to talk about things. So this year we started a new tradition. The board doesn't even know about this, so I'm just going to go about it. So I created this award. It's very it's coveted, it's prestigious, honorable, noble, and amazing. But it is the HMIS 100% Data Completion Gold Trophy of Alaska. I know we've all been waiting for this. But I want to recognize the agencies who have committed the time and resources into ensuring that we have good information to feed up to our higher stakeholder level. So I'm going to read off the names. Hold your applause, I know. There's several of them. So Blood and Fire Ministries, Brother Francis Shelter in Kodiak, Family Promise, Amatsu, 4A's in Southeast, Interior Alaska Center for Nonviolent Living, Love in Action, Nome Emergency Shelter Team, Salvation Army Fairbanks, and in Hoonah, and in Sitka, South Peninsula Haven House, St. Vincent de Paul, Tanana Chiefs Conference, Anchorage Community Mental Health Services, Anchorage Housing Initiatives Incorporated, Catholic Social Services, 4A's, and Rural CAP. If you're associated with one of these programs, please stand up right now. Absolutely. Thank you. The trophy's not real, it's just on that, but you can download this PowerPoint on the guidebook app. So if your agency wasn't on this list, you should probably go talk to ICA as well. But because of that hard work, traditionally we haven't been able to get this information back into the hands. This year we just created these amazing tools for you to use to share your story. On our website, we have data dashboards that jump down there. They show statewide. You can look at Balance State. You can look at Anchorage. You can jump down to smaller communities in the very near future in the Balance of State on it. Zach's going to talk about that tomorrow morning in his dashboards presentation. So check it out. That'll be a great way to learn how to utilize these tools. But this is really about sharing your story and helping us make data-driven decisions. So it really enriches our story when you have this information. And we can talk about, this year to date, you've served in our system 12,395 clients as of yesterday. It's incredible. 12,395 clients in the last 10 months. HUD, the last year, you probably heard us talk about system performance measures. Data is important, but we need an objective way to monitor our system performance. And so HUD created these 7 system performance measures that they use to see how we're doing on a variety of different areas. And so there's a new dashboard that shows our system performance measures as well, year to year. We can see where we are, we can see where we're doing well, and there's obviously some places that we can improve. And so our coalition is very focused on using this information to help inform our future planning efforts and focus. If you're a grantee, we're going to be talking to you about system performance all the time, and if you are running a local coalition, you should be really keyed into this and looking at it and monitoring how we're doing and what's needed. There's a system performance session tomorrow, I think in the afternoon. So you should go to that if you have questions about it. And transparency of our data is really important too. We don't own this data. There's a lot of people are really protective of their information. This is all available on our website, aggregate level data that you can access. So please do see that. There's some really cool interactive tools on there where you can kind of see different areas of the state and their need. Definitely utilize those tools. So a major accomplishment I wanted us to really recognize as well is coordinated entry. If you haven't heard about coordinated entry, it's basically utilizing a common assessment process to prioritize service delivery for folks in need in your community. It's very client focused. Individuals no longer have to shop for services. They enter an access point, they get assessed. There's one community list as opposed to 5 different wait lists in the community, and it's prioritized on vulnerability. Anchorage, big shout out to Anchorage. In fact, we have, first of all, I'm really excited. I want to point out that Anchorage just recently hired a new executive director, Christy Duff. Raise your hand. Yes. Christy was the former coordinated entry manager for Anchorage and is now the executive director. She's extremely sharp, very analytical, and is going to accomplish a lot of great things in Anchorage. But I hope I'm not stealing your thunder of your local report that we're going to have here. But Anchorage really led the charge in the state with coordinated entry. They pushed the button and went live with it this last year. The balance of state is going through a planning process right now to set it up. There's a lot of challenges of setting up a coordinated entry system in such a large area. But Anchorage really did this with a lot less HUD guidance that was even available at the time, and yet they have been very successful in their mission. As of October 10th, they've housed 99 single adults using a coordinated entry process, 183 families, and 34 transition age youth this year using a coordinated entry system. I stole that from your report, Christy. So that's great. And we're getting there in the balanced state. Please go to the coordinated entry session in the morning so you can hear more about that. And another accomplishment is our ramp up of our point in time count. This year's point in time count is on January 23rd, 2018. That's my birthday. That's what I'm going to be doing on my birthday. But we really accomplished a lot this last year. Shout out to Kenai Peninsula. This last point in time count, they had an amazing amount of agencies participate in their project, Homeless Connect, that don't traditionally do that. They have a lot of great organization in the Kenai Peninsula, and this year we're expecting to see a lot more communities participate that as well, particularly in Southeast Alaska. So where do we go from here? Talked about accomplishments, but we often hear, we've studied this and studied this and studied this. What can we do to improve our situation? What can we do to make things better? That's a call I get a lot from a lot of different communities. I'd like to first talk about rural Alaska. So despite our vast geography in this state, we still do live in a very connected state. There's a lot of migration that happens among those in need. And what's happening in our rural areas has a direct relationship on what happens in urban areas. And that's not necessarily unique to Alaska, but it is our reality. Traditional metrics that we use to measure this problem do not effectively describe the current situation that is happening in rural Alaska. Federal definitions of homelessness don't describe houses just like this one, which we visited in the village of Savunga, that has 15 people living in it. It doesn't describe that. And it's really painful every year to send up our information to the federal government about our current need of homelessness and send a big fat 0 for this community in terms of how many people are homeless. It's not right. The system is not set up to address that. I posted a few photos of, these are all from a recent trip to Savunga that Sue Steinacker brought me there, and Delbert Pengawi, the tribal president, is actually here as well from Savunga. He's going to talk about this tomorrow, but this is the reality. Generational living, substandard housing. I mean, it's even written on the walls by the children who live there. And this is the reality that they're facing. We haven't done enough to do this, to address this. But I can say there is a positive to this. We have been banging at the doors and getting on every conference call that we can with our regional HUD office, and they're hearing us. Just 2 weeks ago, Scott Schomburg and myself were able to go, or 3 weeks ago, to Boise, Idaho, where they invited 15 rural COCs, continuum of care organizations, to hear from us about our challenges addressing rural homelessness in a system that's primarily set up for denser populated areas. They've made a commitment to have consistent communication with our rural COCs, and so I'm looking forward to that. And they're currently working on revisions to the Opening Doors Plan, the federal plan to end homelessness, and to incorporate some of what they've heard from these rural communities. That's a big step. That's a big step. It's not going to change overnight, but they are starting to listen to us a little bit more. And we definitely share your feedback and stories with them at the highest level that we can. But we can't just wait for the federal government to come and solve all the problems either. You know, we need to figure out how we can do better here in Alaska. And events like this allow us to have increased coordination among both communities and agencies. I mentioned that we're going to talk quite a bit about that in our breakout sessions, but we really need to learn from each other, be creative, and be aggressive on this issue. So please participate in the afternoon session and tomorrow's afternoon session on the rural housing. Shifting more to a statewide focus, you know, we've talked about a lot of the systematic improvements that we've been making in terms of coordinated entry, but at the end of the day, we really need to just increase our capacity in general on the resources that we have to house folks. You know, I mentioned earlier that we saw 12,395 clients over this last over year to date, as of yesterday. But right now, only 36% of those people have exited to a permanent destination. Only 36%. Now, that number is probably a little bit lower than what the reality is. Sometimes people leave your shelter and exit to a permanent situation. You couldn't capture that, but it's still low. It's not where it needs to be. Ideally, we want to be 100%, right? Somebody's in need of a roof over their head, they hit your system, and you have some place to put them. That's what functional zero is. But this percentage of housed folks that have hit our system is really indicative of some very real and very tough realities to swallow. Yes, I'm doing the maps again. This is a map of where our services are in this state. If you're green, you're good. If you're red, you aren't so good. This is all year-round permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and emergency shelters in our state by census area per capita. As you notice, you know, the more densely populated areas, they have more services. That's very natural. But just because there's a resource in your community doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who needs services can actually access that resource. We have a very developed domestic violence system in our state. If you're not fleeing domestic violence situation, you can't access those beds. So if you take the domestic violence beds out of this map, it gets a lot different. There are whole swaths of the state where your closest resource might be 1,000 miles away. Oh yeah, not connected by a road either. Let's put the DV units back in. These are our emergency shelters, and let's kind of walk through our continuum of care. Luckily, we do have folks, even in our smallest communities, doing a lion's share of work to ensure that, at least in the winter months, people have a safe and warm place to be at night. But as emergency shelter isn't like that's not the goal. In fact, I always say this, emergency shelter is really unacceptable. You know, that should not be an acceptable solution for somebody. I always get this call, hey, we really want to open a shelter in our community. That's good. You do need to address those needs. But really the first question is, I need to figure out how to house these people. So okay. Sure. I didn't pause for applause, but I appreciate it, Dave. So let's look at transitional housing in our state. And then let's look at permanent supportive housing, the intervention that is for our most vulnerable folks. Now, this is a little out of date because Juneau just opened 32 units in their community of permanent supportive housing, an amazing project, but still, we are nowhere close to where we need to be. And as we implement coordinated entry in our state, we're going to end up with a list of folks, a by name list, ranked by vulnerability, with nowhere to send them. This needs to be addressed yesterday, really, but it needs to be addressed sooner than later. And really, going through this coordinated entry planning process, you know, it's really pulled back the curtain on how our system operates. Because of the great work that you've been doing in entering your data, we've been able to create what I call this the logjam map. I'm not going to walk through it because it's really confusing at first glance. But it really shows that we are running an outdated shelter system in this state. We have very few housing first resources across the state, but I can say the few that we have are working phenomenally. I mean, absolutely brilliantly, exactly as you read about in those best practices reports. In our rapid rehousing, interventions where folks just need a little bit of support, security deposit, temporary rental assistance. Folks are cycling through our rapid rehousing, our 17 rapid rehousing units that we have in the balance of state. Exactly as you would expect. They aren't staying on that system. The folks that are getting a little bit of help are exiting that rapid rehousing into permanent housing. They just need a little bit of help. Permanent supportive housing. The units that we do have, I mean, if you have a chance to visit Tanana Chief's permanent supportive housing program here, you absolutely should. It's an amazing program. The folks that are utilizing those interventions, they're staying in them. Their health is improving. They're having less interaction with law enforcement. They're having less ER visits. They're having less it's saving, there's an economic benefit to doing this in addition to a social justice benefit. This is the direction that we really need to go, and this gap needs to be addressed. I'll get into how we do that. First, we need to talk at the local level, build these community partnerships. We need to get all stakeholders involved. If you're running a local coalition, it should not just be agencies. It should not just be volunteers, but it should be agencies, churches, concerned citizens, and yes, municipalities. The missing piece there. I've been in a lot of communities where this just isn't the case. Sometimes the sentiment is, from the local elected officials that's a social service problem. That's a church problem. It's not because they don't care. It's just that they don't have the information that you have. They don't know what resources you have in your community. And so one of the big pushes that we have here in our coalition, this came out of the Governor's Summit, is to look at our statutes that regard comprehensive planning in our state. Right now, it is not required for cities to even consider housing or homelessness issues in their comprehensive plans. That needs to change. And at a statewide level, we need to make sure that these conversations are happening. There is a lot of talk. The Governor's Council meeting is happening this afternoon. That's great. But if you look at the communication that we have at a legislative level, it's almost non-existent. There is no avenue for communities on a regular basis to communicate with our state legislature on housing and homelessness issues. And so one of the calls that we have been continually saying and asking for, and will continue saying and asking for, is the establishment of a legislative committee on housing and homelessness. Not one committee is assigned housing issues in this state. It's unacceptable. And then also coming out of the Governor's Summit, it was very clear that there was a need for high-level policy coordination on housing and homelessness issues. In fact, it was the number one recommendation that came out of that. There are a lot of different agencies that work in this field, and there's a lot of good that comes out of it. But how much more good could we do if we identified ways to better leverage our resources, to identify common goals, and to reduce administrative burdens on managing multiple grants just to start one new project? The Juneau Housing First Collaborative, you guys utilize, 7, 8 grant streams, 10 grant streams to get that going? It shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't, for a best practice. This step has been outlined in plans that we already have on the table that are sitting on a shelf right now in the statewide strategic supportive housing plan. Goal number 3, create a funders collaborative to do this. The idea is simple. If you are working to address this problem, if you're working with this population, it's better to sit at the same table, come to a common ground, and figure out how you can leverage your resources so you can get more out of them. It's not that difficult. But eventually, we really do need to address the elephant that's in the room, which is funding for these new projects. I don't want to bag on the agencies that are really that are putting a lot of funds into addressing this problem. There isn't a whole lot of funding for new projects at all. A lot of those grant streams are just keeping afloat programs right now. And everyone understands that there are challenges that our state is facing right now fiscally. I mean, I'm not even going to try to say that there aren't. But we cannot let perceived future economic barriers prevent us from positioning ourselves better to serve those in need in this state. We are one of 3 states in this entire country that does not have a statewide housing trust fund. 3 states. We're one of them. It may not be the time today. To put this in place. But creating such a dedicated revenue source will take time to materialize. And the longer we wait to begin this planning process to create such a fund, the longer it will take to address this very serious gap. And who suffers from that? Not the people in this room, but the people we're trying to help. We owe it to our clients to have these tough conversations. We owe it to our clients to do everything we can to improve service delivery and ensure that, at a minimum, no one has to go without a roof over their head. So in closing, I just want to make sure, I truly believe that anything is possible with teamwork, and that every single person in this room has something to bring to the table. As a very wise man once said recently, if you're walking down the right path and you're willing to keep walking, eventually you'll make progress. And if there's one thing I've learned in this position over the last year and a half, is that traveling across to many different communities, from communities as small as a couple hundred to our more densely populated areas, it never ceases to amaze me how creative, open-minded, and driven you all are to help those in need. Whether it be the first small community I visited in Cordova, where I learned what a roadkill committee was, or whether it be in Nome, where I learned that you can actually operate a shelter without one single full-time employee, or whether it be in Anchorage, where I learned that a community can come together, be innovative and creative, and get awarded Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant funds, one of 10 communities in the entire country to reward that. That's absolutely amazing. Or whether it be in Juneau, where I know that philosophical differences with elected officials can be overcome by just communicating and taking the time to do it. We could do a lot, and we've come a long ways, but there's a long ways that we have to continue, that we have to go. So do take the time to utilize this conference. We don't get many opportunities to come together like this in a single room and learn and share from each other. Bring this information back to your communities and be aggressive with it and make a change. So thanks, everybody. Let me talk about this. We're going to take a break right now, and then we're going to come back and have some local coalition updates for everybody. So thank you.